Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Jacob Wile, too.
And tonight, we're talking Mr. Banks.
Retro.
Yeah, that's right, Jacob. That's right. We are, in fact, talking Mr. Banks, which, in layman's terms here on the channel means we're talking General Disney. Yeah. Because this channel came out the same year as Saving Mr. Banks. And so we were like, hey, wouldn't it be topical to name our main Disney podcast Talking Mr. Banks? Anyways, I digress. How are you, Jacob?
Fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm battling a cold, but you know how that goes. It is cold season, so haven't let that stop me.
I know that.
So, Jacob, we are talking about tonight. This is actually kind of a bit of a bucket list podcast for me. I'm actually really excited about this one. So, we've gotten a great response from all the DuckTales podcasts we've been doing over this past year, and I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into them and everything. And, of course, with DuckTales kind of going into hiatus mode, we don't know exactly when the next new episodes are going to come back, presumably sometime early next year. We figured a good way to kind of subside that and maybe even kind of bridge out to dive back into our Discovering DuckTales series, which was essentially a vlog going through every episode of the original DuckTales. We talk about the DuckTales movie, Jacob.
Yep.
So, of course, DuckTales, the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. This is written by the great Alan Burnett, Jacob, and tell the good folks what other credit Alan Burnett has to his name.
Basically, a lot of Batman the Animated Series plus another TV to movie adaptation, Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, Jacob, you were actually the first person who pointed out that this and Mask of the Phantasm were written by the same person, and I remember that just blowing my mind. Just like, oh my god, it makes so much sense.
And they're completely different kinds of movies, too. That's the thing.
But they're completely different kind of movies based on two completely different kinds of shows. But the great thing about this, the thing that these two
both based on comic books, no less.
That is actually true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But the thing that these two have in common is that these movies, Mask of the Phantasm and DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, in my opinion, I think they're both definitely like the peak, the high point of their respective series. Blue Dragon 5 has said, long and hard that Mask of the Phantasm is like the, it's basically like the prime version of Batman the Animated Series. And honestly, I think the same can be said here with DuckTales. This is really the best DuckTales we ever got in terms of the original show, I think.
I can see why you would think so.
And for good reason, of course, because this is, in fact, a theatrically released movie, by Disney Toon Studios, the same folks who brought us a Goofy movie. Not going to mention some of the other stuff that Disney Toons has worked in, but hey, they made a Goofy movie. We love a Goofy movie.
What's funny, though, is that this is actually shorter than the 5-part series episode.
Is it really? Oh, my God. Wow.
Because think about it, the 5-part episodes are like 22-minute each.
And this movie is pretty short. This movie's like, what, like an hour and 13 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, so if you technically added up, those 5 hours, those 5-piece episodes, those 5-piece arcs are actually longer than this movie.
That's funny to think about. But you know what, Jacob? While those 5-part arcs, they maybe had some filler moments. Of course, Bubba Duck being a prime example, but I think this is just like the reason I think this is so good is because there's really not much filler in this movie. I think this movie is just like it's so tightly constructed. It really is just like everything that we love about DuckTales just rolled up into a very, very, very good movie.
And I was honestly surprised by the animation quality here.
Yeah, let's talk about the animation. One of the things I want to point out right off the bat is something really kind of distracting happens with the animation, Jacob, is that, we get that great opening sequence. And this movie it kicks off like a, basically like a starter gun going off in a race. You know what I mean? It's just like DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. And then it's like, bam, we're in it. Launchpad's about to crash into a bunch of pyramids. Oh, it's such a good opening scene, Jacob. I could praise the living... Oh, God, I could praise the living heck out of this opening scene. It's so good. But what I want to point out about it, though, is that you'll notice that the animation of the character models in the plane in this opening scene is like there's way more shading and way more texture on them than at any other point in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I did. I am noticing
Just
that now
that
that
one sequence of them in the plane.
I am noticing that now that I'm looking at the images.
Right. It's like, because like with movies like the Rugrats movie, right? Which, by the way, folks, we definitely are planning on maybe doing some stuff with the Nicktoons movies, so stay tuned for that. But, with stuff like the Rugrats movie, it's basically like that jump up in animation for the whole movie, right? With like, like the really, really, all the shading and stuff, all the extra levels of detail. With this movie, it's like, all right, we'll give you a taste of, of what these characters would look like, really, really jazzed up. But the rest of the movie is, they're basically going to be kind of like, slightly nicer looking than the show.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. I mean, kind of weird that they wouldn't like put that effort throughout the rest of the movie.
Or just spread it out, you know what I mean? Like, just like spread it out a little bit, because it's literally right at the opening, and then that style never shows up again.
I mean, it was really fluid too.
It is. It is really fluid. I really do wish the whole movie looked like that. But alas, I do think this movie does have great animation, though. I think I'm kind of selling itself short.
I mean, you still kind of like see the upgraded budget from the show.
Absolutely.
I mean, one place to point out is Murlock's transformation when he's at McDuck Manor. Like it's completely seamless.
Oh, all the Murloc transformations throughout the movie are great. Murloc's such a good Disney villain. We'll get to him. I'm
just saying, all of his transformations are like seamless right there. I mean, that and in the old show they probably just like cut away to a shadow than a transformation.
You're right.
Here they actually have the benefit of a higher budget to allow that.
So I love how the opening of this movie is basically like, it's something like 18 minutes. Like I was timing it out. I was honestly like really crossing my fingers that it'd be exactly 22 minutes, because how perfect would that be? But it's essentially like, basically a confined episode of the show, but on this epic scale. It's just like an Indiana Jones adventure in DuckTales, if there ever was one, and I freaking love it.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame this movie didn't do too well, because they could have gotten more of that.
Yeah, well, we'll see about, I mean, it is funny to think about, Jacob. Like, what if they did like an 80s nostalgia movie based on the old DuckTales show at the same time that they're doing the new DuckTales show?
That'd be kind of hard. That'd be kind of weird to do.
I know, but I can dream, can't I?
we can all dream.
I mean, you could even get like Alan Young back, so that way you could differentiate it.
Well, it's kind of hard considering he's dead.
That's true. I'm dumb. I'm sorry. I'm really dumb. Anyways, I realized that like as soon as it slipped out of my mouth. Anyways, okay, enough with the hypothetical like fanboying here. So yeah, early on in the movie, we get introduced to Murloc, and oh god, Murloc's such a good villain.
He is indeed. I mean, he's definitely an interesting character and good foil to the genie and all.
I mean, like, the character himself is honestly nothing that special, right? Like, he's an evil sorcerer who wants to, say it with me, take over the world.
Of course.
But
I just had to throw that in.
Yeah, of course. But
of course.
No, but it's his design and it's his shape-shifting powers, and obviously the Christopher Lloyd of it all that give it the weight.
Yep.
So, Jacob, this is actually my first exposure to Christopher Lloyd as a kid.
I forget what mine was. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff that I've seen, so I can't really pinpoint the first place where I've ever seen Christopher Lloyd.
I know I saw this before Roger Rabbit. I know I saw this before Back to the Future. I'm like trying to think if there was like another.
I believe I saw Back to the Future before I saw this.
No, I'm sure I saw this before Back to the Future, because the VHS of this was like a mainstay in my collection as a little kid, Ironically enough, this and Aladdin were both mainstays.
This movie actually predated Aladdin.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I'm sure we'll be talking about comparisons between this and Aladdin, because I feel like that's kind of one of the interesting like touchstones of this movie in terms of like the Disney history of it all when you place it all into context.
Ironically, there's another episode of this show where I also had a genie with 3 wishes.
Yes. Which, did we already cover that one?
I believe we did.
Yeah. So
like they did the whole 3 wishes thing before Aladdin did, and 3 wishes have been around for a while, I think, though.
Oh yeah, well yeah, the 3 wishes thing that's been around since like I don't actually think it was in the original Alibaba tale, though I could be wrong about that. But I digress.
The original Aladdin, I think, had unlimited wishes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, but I know it predates this, anyways.
Of course, and I'm not saying DuckTales came with the whole 3 wishes idea.
So, Jacob, you want to know what one of my most favorite images of this movie is?
Which one?
I love when Launchpad's camel trips over that little tiny pyramid sticking out of the sand. And then they start digging, and then it cuts, and it's just this massive pyramid that they unearth.
It's amazing that they're able to do that in a single day.
Okay, yeah, granted, I'll give you that. It's a big job, but I just love the idea of Scrooge McDuck like stumbling upon this pyramid that's just completely buried in the sand. It's like it's like DuckTales like exploring a lost civilization or something like that.
And that somehow it went missing for thousands of years.
Yeah. And then, of course...
That's the funny thing. It was missing for thousands of, like, over 1,000 years, and all it took was Launchpad tripping his camel.
And then, of course, we get into the actual temple, and my God, Jacob, the atmosphere in this temple is just off the charts, I think.
It does set the tone pretty well for it. I mean, it feels like...
again, going with the Aladdin comparisons, I'm not going to say it's as good as the Cave of Wonders or anything, but, it's kind of ironic how many things in this movie are overshadowed by Aladdin. It's just, I want to give this movie the props it deserves in its own right.
Well, Aladdin also had a bigger budget and production quality.
Of course. I will say, I honestly think Murloc might be more intimidating than Jafar.
Well, Jafar is more intended to be more of a comedic villain in a way.
I guess, and Murloc has his intimidating moments, Murloc has his comedic moments, but there's a big underlying factor to Murloc that we'll get to very soon that I want to really talk about that honestly is like part of the writing that really kind of blows me away how deep it is with him. But, okay, so we get that great action sequence as they're trying to escape the temple. What do you think of the sumo wrestling scorpions?
Quite interesting. Definitely, basically to see like their effect and what they would do, but obviously they can't show that.
I mean, that's definitely like one of the things that stuck out as I was, when I was a kid watching this. And of course, I love the giant turtle shell thing that they ride down in.
It's like you said earlier, it's like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
Oh, it's great. This whole opening sequence is like, it's basically like the closest that Disney has come to doing an opening sequence in the style of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, not just the temple setting, but just how it's paced out.
If you look at it's like Scrooge actually has the fedora.
Right.
It's kind of an ironic. Like the original Raiders of the Lost Ark was in ways inspired by Scrooge McDuck.
Exactly.
and now it seems like DuckTales is taking notes from Raiders.
And keep in mind, this movie came out like 1 year after Last Crusade.
Like around the time, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
I mean, it's public knowledge because both George Lucas and Spielberg have admitted that the boulder scene was explicitly lifted from Scrooge McDuck.
Right. So, Jacob, I think we need to kind of talk about the elephant in the room, and no, I'm not talking about the adorable elephant that Webby wishes for. You want to address Dijon?
He's definitely interesting, I guess.
I feel like Dijon is definitely the part of this movie that has not aged well.
Yeah, it's kind of not PC.
No, to say the least, to say the least. I mean, it's just basically everything about this character is like, oh, okay, that's why people don't talk about this movie that much. All right.
It's like I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not all. I'm not whole hell bent on the whole PC
No,
thing.
I'm
But
not either. I'm not either. But I'm just saying, in this culture, in this climate, I could see how it would rub people the wrong way.
yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean,
I mean, he is basically just like a Weasley, whiny, like, hey, by the way, like all Egyptian people or whatever the hell race he's trying to convey, are like little weasels who are trying to steal your stuff.
yeah, it's kind of weird.
And honestly, Jacob, I feel like part of that is just, I mean, let's face it. Indiana Jones has stereotypes. It totally does. I mean, look at the swordsman from Raiders.
Yep.
I think the problem is that while Indiana Jones uses its stereotype characters as more just like, like jokes and kind of like, one-offs, Dijon is like a major player in this movie.
And yeah, he definitely is.
Like, he has a ton of screen time.
Well, he does have quite a bit. He even usurps the Scrooge a little bit too.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like it is. Like I said, I do love this movie. I really do. I think I think a lot of it holds up really well. But yeah, the Dijon character, not so much. Not so much. And honestly, I don't even think it's fully because of just the fact that he's kind of like a stereotypical Arab character. I honestly think it's more he's just sort of an annoying character just in general.
That's probably more like why he's just got rubs the wrong way though. I mean, they even brought him back in the finale of the show.
Oh, they did? Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like the Golden Goose. He was like part of the Golden Goose.
Uh-huh. Nice, nice.
Which ironically is also kind of movie-like, if you ask me.
Okay, so I would say the parts of the movie that take place in the mansion they're overall probably the spot of the movie where it feels most like, yep, we're watching an episode of the show.
Yep.
Without
the adventure aspect.
Sort of just
the
like
adventure aspect.
Right. But what's interesting about that, Jacob, is I feel like this movie, basically in the 3 acts it has, it hits on all 3 of the types of episodes that we would get in DuckTales. We would get episodes about Scrooge McDuck, the adventurer. We would get episodes centered on the kids, just kids being kids at the mansion and everything, which is very much what the second part of the movie is. And then we would also get episodes, mostly like the Glomgold episodes would be centered around like the McDuck Enterprise and the Money Vault and stuff like that. And so I think it's great structurally the way this movie plays out where, yeah, it does kind of do that thing where it feels like 3 episodes of the show strung together. But I feel like they really picked, they picked some good different styles of storytelling to go with that really represent everything the show has to offer.
It's like picking and choosing the best aspects.
Right, and I think we can all agree Act 2 is not the best aspect.
And it definitely picks up with Murloc.
Yeah, I'm not trying to downplay Act 2 at all. There's definitely some stuff I like in it. I love Mrs. Beakley just, getting more and more horrified. Like, at first she sees the elephant, and then she sees Murloc as the rat, and then finally, like, we have that, like, that crazy sequence where all the webby stuffed animals come to life.
Yep.
So, Jacob, let's actually talk about the genie character a little bit here. This is obviously, I think, probably the area where people are going to most directly compare it to Aladdin, which I think is unfortunate just because, like, Aladdin, like, Genie in Aladdin was lightning in a bottle. It was nothing short of lightning in a bottle. Pun intended.
Lightning in a lamp.
Yeah. Anyways.
I mean, Robert, I mean, you don't get much better than that.
So, well, this genie is also played by a comedian, Rip Taylor. You know, obviously not as beloved as Robin Williams or anything. And this genie is kind of like, he's a wisecracker. However, Dragon, God, I'm sorry, Jacob. I'm talking about an Alan Burnett product, so I feel like I'm talking to Dragon. Anyways. The really interesting thing I want to hit on with this genie is kind of the PTSD angle they go with him. I love the idea that this genie is absolutely haunted by the wishes that Murloc made him do.
Yeah, I mean, like the destruction of Atlantis and Pompeii, mainly.
I mean, it makes you wonder, think about that, Jacob. Think about that for a second. This genie, against his own will, basically committed like mass genocide and brought down civilizations. I mean, it's treated as a joke in the movie, like it's basically like, oh yeah, Atlantis is a resort and they gave Murloc bad service, but really underlying it, it's super dark stuff. Like, it really kind of caught me by surprise watching this back as an adult. And to me, it kind of makes sense why Murloc is a genuinely intimidating villain.
He's with the powers, he's able to commit mass genocide on a whim.
Seriously, I cannot get over how dark and deep that is. Like, that's both a terrifying villain and a really complex struggle for your hero character to have to deal with.
It would be interesting if they focus on that a bit more, though.
I understand why they don't. They
want this movie to be too depressing, I guess.
However, I do feel like they give it enough focus that it does become a prevalent part of the movie. And like I said, I think that little element of it, that element of like, the genie is absolutely terrified of Murloc because he knows what kind of a man Murloc is.
Or whatever kind of creature Murloc is.
Well, right. I don't know. He's some sort of like wolf thing, I think. I don't know.
It's kind of interesting if he was like they explain more of his history with Kali Baba.
Right.
And how Kali Baba managed to actually steal the lamp from Murloc to begin with. He must have had an off day, but okay, enough joking around. It's like, I really do like the concept of the whole infinite wish with the amulet, though.
Yeah, it's a very simple concept, right? Like, it is kind of running on cartoon logic, but it makes sense. It makes sense for the context of this movie.
I mean, the whole genie itself is kind of cartoon
Of course.
Or at least fantasy logic.
And I also like how it basically like explains that you can't just wish for more wishes.
But explains how Murloc is able to.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't want to have anyone have that kind of power again.
So, I'm just going to highlight one of my favorite scenes out of this segment, Jacob. I really love the scene. This goes back to like major childhood nostalgia here. It's such a simple scene, but I really love it when, after the kids, after they've kind of established who Genie is and everything, and they're, hiding him from Scrooge and whatnot, they go out into the backyard, right? And I love this scene where, they're jumping on the trampoline and there's, they wish for this train set and then they wish for the giant ice cream sundae. And it's something about that scene just really appealed to me as a kid. You know what I mean? This whole idea. And also I like the idea in this movie that the genie sort of, he sort of stresses like, look, don't wish for something that's going to be so big that it draws attention to itself.
Yeah, it really is pretty interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this movie, like, it's obviously not as, it's not the masterpiece that Aladdin is, but like you said, Aladdin had a way bigger budget. But I think it's unfair to just say that this movie is just a direct kind of like, it just lies in the shadow of Aladdin because, it really, the genie stuff is quite different than the way it's played in Aladdin in some elements.
I mean, the genie in Aladdin's like full on willing to create this huge, gigantic wish.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Like the genie in Aladdin is like, Have some of column A, try all of column B. Whereas this genie is like,
try a little bit of column A.
Yeah.
Try a
this
little bit.
Genie's basically like, you know what? If you have to wish for the giant ice cream sundae, that's fine. Can we just go out in the backyard where no one will see it?
It's like he's kind of sensible in a way.
Oh.
he actually he knows the consequences of these wishes in a way.
But of course, I love how Webby just blatantly ignores that. Like, you know, a couple scenes later with the whole all their stuffed animals coming to life.
Well, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Then the movie kind of takes a turn when Scrooge discovers that Gene is a genie. What do you think of that whole, like, E.T. style element of trying to pass him off as a new kid for briefly in the movie?
I mean, admittedly, he kind of does look like one without all the genie stuff, so it's kind of easy to pass him off as one.
Yeah. Scrooge kind of shows some colorful sides of himself when he finds out what the genie is. I mean, okay, I'm joking when I say this, all right? But he basically turns straight up racist. He's like, a genie isn't a person, it's a thing.
And he obviously learned his lesson, of course.
Of course. I'm just saying, like, Scrooge is, like, almost unnecessarily harsh when he first meets Genie.
Actually, well, it's kind of, I mean, his comic book counterpart would definitely be like that, though. I mean, for sure, I mean, they really softened him up, believe it or not, for the series.
No, I can believe it.
I mean, the original Scrooge probably would say something along those lines, so it's not too far out of Scrooge's character, actually.
Yeah, and of course, Scrooge is instantly just thinking about, like, oh, what can I buy? A diamond mine? No, all the diamond mines.
The entire diamond
mining industry.
Yes. It's like, this is going to require some thought. It's like, I mean, although he'd probably get in trouble with the whole monopoly thing.
Right, yeah.
I mean, because remember, Glomgold owns some of those mines. If he took those over, there'd probably be hell to pay. That's why it requires some thought.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. Then we get to the kind of like the party, right?
Yeah, took him 40 years to get the treasure. He finally has it in his grasp.
Right, and this is the point where the movie really ratchets up, because of course Murloc is like chasing the genie throughout this whole scene, and the genie's just terrified. I love when the genie like warps Scrooge into the lamp with him to hide.
Yeah, Scrooge isn't having any of it though.
And then Jacob, Dijon, everyone's favorite racial stereotype, Dijon. He gets his hands on the lamp, and suddenly this movie turns into Back to the Future Part 2.
Yep. Well, speaking of Christopher Lloyd.
Right. Am I going through too fast through any of this, by the way? Is there anything you wanted to cover that we haven't covered yet?
No, I mean, we're pretty much going on the scenes and where we want.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He pretty much wishes for Scrooge's life.
And I love how this is kind of twisted around. Like, the genie is initially trying to think, like, all right, like, I'm gonna get this idiot to have me as his master, so that way I'll avoid Murloc being my master. But then Dijon turns out, he's just as greedy as Murloc is. And he's greedy to a point where it's like, it might not be as devastating on a worldwide level as Murloc would be. But, of course, it is very much like this is where the personal stakes of this come into play. Because nothing less than the fate of the McDuck industry in itself is at stake here.
Scrooge is greedy without his kindness. Relatively speaking.
Right. So yeah, like I said, this is where the movie really starts to ratchet up. This is where we really get into like the McDuck Enterprises becomes Dijon Enterprises. Scrooge gets thrown in jail. I mean, it really is just a fantastic low of lows, isn't it? Like, okay,
I mean,
the money pit is Dijon's. In fact, the entire industry is Dijon's.
it kind of reminds me of the episode where Scrooge was like basically thrown on the streets.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like that low blows, except I think that was like the lowest low Scrooge ever got. Though admittedly losing his entire industry is kind of bad for him.
And it might not, it's interesting because it might not be time travel, but it is very much like using like magic to, it's almost kind of like an alternate timeline in a way.
Like even the guards don't seem to recognize Scrooge as the head of McDuck Enterprises anymore.
Right, so it's interesting how the logic of the dreams in this, or I'm sorry, the logic of the wishes in this movie work. Although I'm sure it's not something the writers like sat around a table for hours on end trying to hash out.
It's just like this happens and that happens.
Right, exactly.
It's like movie logic, like suspension of disbelief. It's like, okay, we understand why they're not, but Scrooge like has to for the sake of the story.
Exactly.
like if all movies like follow the exact logic of the story that they said, if all of them said like that, I mean, they'd all be boring. I mean, some of the scenes of wonder could easily be cut out and because they service no story, but they're there for pure, just pure entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, like the giant ice cream sundae scene that I mentioned. I mean, that's basically just like expanding on the kids playing with the idea of having a genie, and it really could be cut. But I really think that scene, like I said, it plays so well in the movie because it just represents the childlike nature of the whole thing.
Yep. And then it kind of contrasts later with what Dijon was doing and how basically they were all somehow able to pay Scrooge's bail.
Mm-hmm.
Must not have had a very high bail.
I know, right?
If 4 kids, Mrs. Beakley, Duckworth, and Launchpad can afford his bail, must not have been that much.
So what do you think of Beakley, Duckworth, and Launchpad in this movie? I mean, obviously they don't have a ton to do, but I think they're pretty serviceable.
I mean, as you mentioned Launchpad, as you mentioned Beakley, she's pretty funny in the whole, pretty much believing she's losing her mind.
Right. Duckworth is just kind of there, but hey, he's there. I see you, Duckworth, in the background, doing your thing.
Yep. And Launchpad is the transport guy again.
Of course. I think all of Launchpad's best stuff is in the opening scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty much where he's best. Like, I took a crash course.
Now you tell me, really, Scrooge, because you've been going, what, like 3 seasons now with Launchpad as your pilot, and you just are now figuring out that Launchpad is not good at flying.
It's like he knew he wasn't good at flying, but it's just like he probably thought he took school of it. I mean, it's like he probably just only goes to Launchpad because he's like the cheapest.
Mm-hmm.
Like a penny a mile, I think it was.
Right. So the climax of this movie, I think, is just absolutely impeccable. Like, this is everything that the DuckTales movie has been building up to, right? Like, this is everything we wanted from a DuckTales movie. It's essentially like the stakes are huge. We're breaking into an iconic location. I love the idea that there's all these alarms that can be triggered, but Scrooge knows how to trigger all the alarms. It's such a good set piece.
And how it brings back the whole marbles. We can take the marbles.
Yes, I like the marbles, yes.
Like how it brings back the whole marbles in the ancient tomb. It's like, it's not that far off from the Kali Baba's tomb.
Right.
It's kind of like a Chekhov's gun kind of thing.
In a way, yeah.
I mean, it's not huge or anything, but still.
No, I just, I love the idea of like using iconic locations from the show in the context of framing, big movies around.
Honestly, though, I would like to see like more and more Lex effect on the world, but I mean, it's not really that big of a loss, I guess. Like, it's clear that he had bigger ambitions than just flying a bin.
Right.
I would like I said, if it would just been a bit longer and they would have expanded upon that, that would have been pretty interesting to see, like his effect on the world.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like at this point in the story, it's become such a personal thing with Scrooge. Like, really, the stakes of this movie are very personal, but they're also very high. So I feel like concentrating on like the outside world might have given this movie, you're right, it would have given this movie a bit more of a scope to it. But as I said, I really do like that this movie really zeroes in on like, okay, we've been following Scrooge as a character for like 3 seasons of the show. We know all the ins and outs of him and what's going to make him feel threatened more than anything else, taking his enterprise out from under him.
Like everything he's worked for.
Right. Which, as I said, this climax does such a good job of, putting the stakes of it in. It's like we feel the weight of Scrooge and everyone else losing the mansion. Like I love how Beakley is especially upset about it. You know what I mean? It's not just Scrooge. It's like everyone's livelihood is kind of like wrapped up in McDuck Enterprises. And I guess in a way, like looking at it through a current lens, you could kind of look at it like, oh, first world problems, boo-hoo, the billionaire got brought down. But like I said, viewing it through a lens of like, like we've been following this character for so long. We know this character is all about his legacy and his enterprise, and now we're seeing him kind of get dragged down.
True. I mean, we also have to remember that JC's a billionaire, but he also worked for his money.
Very true. That is something we oftentimes, because it's funny, Jacob. I've seen some, quote unquote think pieces about how Scrooge McDuck is like a negative stereotype of the capitalist mindset, and I'm just like, no, get out of here with that BS. Like the whole point of Scrooge McDuck is that he's a hard worker who earned what he has.
I mean, supposedly he was created like a parody of like that kind of era and stuff like that when he was originally made. But it was shown that he actually also did work for it as well.
Right.
And but what he created was basically to be kind of a stereotype, like a parody of the stereotype in a way, like a parody of those industrious people.
Okay,
so it's not entirely off base. I mean, I wouldn't call him entirely a negative stereotype, but those theories aren't without foundation, of course.
Well, like I said, I feel like some people are kind of like unfairly linking Scrooge to like the Occupy Wall Street of it all. Like, hey, we should throw Scrooge out of his money bin. And I'm like, no, get out of here. So what do you think of Murloc transforming into the Griffin, kind of like the final form?
It was pretty cool to see. I mean, because I could see I mean, I'm trying to say the same thing. Like, it was actually pretty cool to see that. I mean, it's like his most deadly form. It's like he was able to. I mean, it's both defensive and offensive, and flying and everything. It's like all around good vehicle form.
And of course, like any good Disney villain, he plummets to his death.
Yep, classic. Scrooge knocked the amulet out of his hands. I mean, of course he plummets to his death. I mean, like, how do we show dying without really showing dying?
Right.
I know we show him falling to his death.
And then when they got to Tarzan, it's like, okay, how can we show dying through falling but still make it brutal?
Silhouette.
Seriously, that's still like the most shocking Disney death by a country mile, I think.
I mean, it's the standard death, but it's the fact that they show it in that movie.
No, it's the fact that he literally gets hung. It's like it's not just that he dies.
I mean, I didn't actually catch that the first time I watched it. Just like, okay, what? Okay, we're kind of getting off topic here.
It's darkly creative, anyways. Definitely. Okay, so Jacob, I would say the element of this movie that's probably the most similar to Aladdin is the whole plot line of like, oh, you've got the 3 wishes, but we're going to use the 3rd wish to set him free.
Yep.
However, Jacob,
Aladdin was probably deep in production around this time too, so around the time this came out. So I mean, they probably had both those set in line by the time both of them were in production. So who knows?
However, the genie gets freed, But in this one, we get to see the most glorious 90s kids fashion ever get put onto the genie when he becomes a real boy. Oh my god. I couldn't believe how 90s it was.
Like you said earlier, I wish we could be a real 90s kid.
Right. Yeah, I sent Jacob a message earlier like, Genie, I wish for you to be a real 90s kid.
Like, and I said, ironically, I was listening to Aladdin on my playlist on that
I know,
time.
that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah,
oh,
so.
Boy, now I can go and watch Nickelodeon. And I don't know what were 90s kids into. Like, Razor scooters, I guess, or was that more early 2000s? I don't know. I'm old.
Early 2000s.
Right. I don't know. Anyways,
I can go watch Nickelodeon play on my Nintendo. I don't know.
I'm gonna go play Sonic the Hedgehog on my Sega Genesis.
Like, I was born in '94, so maybe I'm a bit of a '90s kid, but I was more of a 2000s boomer.
Yeah, I was born in like December of '90, so I have a couple more years of experience in the '90s department.
Yep. So this movie was before my time.
This movie was technically before my time. It was like a couple of months before my time.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure this was like the one Disney movie that came out the year I was born. At least the one animated Disney movie. I'm sure there was like live action Touchstone movies or whatever, but anyways.
Speaking of Aladdin, my sister was born the year that came out.
Nice.
Sorry, I think
Lion King was the first movie that I saw in theaters. I was like 3.5 years old.
What was that in Aladdin?
No, The Lion King.
Oh, The Lion King. That was actually the first movie my sister saw.
Nice.
But
so for that reason, like when the Lion King remake comes out, it's going to be the first time in my life that I'll see a remake of a movie that I originally saw in theaters. And so that's going to be a really surreal experience for me.
I wonder if they'll make a DuckTales movie based on the new show.
I think the days of making movies out of cartoons in general is kind of coming to an end. I feel like if studios want to do that now, they'll just basically make a long episode.
Yeah, they kind of already did that several times with already kind of did that with the Woohoo episode of the new show.
Right. I mean that's just kind of like the general format for Disney shows these days. They did that with Tangled. They did that with Big Hero 6. I'm not saying, never say never, and this new DuckTales show is certainly popular, so I'd love to see it happen. I'd love to see a DuckTales movie on the big screen. I don't know, Jacob. I'm not entirely against the idea of doing like an 80s revival of the old show, bringing Russi Taylor back. I don't know.
They just had to get someone who sounds like Alan Young.
Yeah, right.
I mean, John Castor replaced him in the Mickey Mouse show, so who knows? We miss you, Alan Young.
Yeah, seriously, I feel embarrassed for not realizing he died. Anyways.
You'll forever be to one generation he was Wilbur, to another he was Scrooge.
I know, right?
Quite a legacy. He left quite the legacy behind.
Okay, Jacob. Any what we haven't really touched on yet that we probably should touch on? What? Is although this is kind of like getting out of order, but we're kind of wrapping up here, so I'm just making sure we don't bypass anything with this movie. Is let's talk about Christopher Lloyd's performance.
Oh yeah, he was great. Like, he really gave it his all here.
Yeah, I mean, it really is very menacing. It's it's quite surprising.
I mean, probably it's not like Judge Doom levels of menacing, but well,
at the same time, like Judge Doom kind of had like a subtlety to him that Murloc does not have. You know what I mean? Murloc is much more of like the mustache twirling, like evil, take over the world type villain.
Of course. It's It's like, gee, I wonder who the villain is.
I know, right?
It's like
Maybe it's the big magic guy who just transformed into a hawk.
It's like I'm quoting Nostalgia Critic there for the basically that's actually what he said for Roger Rabbit and Judge Doom.
Right.
Like, gee, I wonder who the villain is.
Is it
Like,
Baby Herman?
Yep. But Christopher Lloyd definitely does give a good performance. This is actually only like 2 years after Roger Rabbit as well. Like, did this like come out in like 1990 or something?
Yeah, this came out August of 1990. Yeah.
It's like this is actually 2 years after Roger Rabbit.
Right. And you could just, you could seriously just like picture like he's just like chewing the scenery. He's just like sinking his teeth into the scenery with this.
I mean, you can tell he loves playing villain roles.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like look at him in Cyber Chase.
Right.
It's actually one of the few educational shows I actually like.
I'll never get past like whenever I hear Cyber Chase, I just think Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase.
I know, but it's actually one of the few educational series I actually like. But
yeah,
he was actually good in that too.
But no, like I said, I just think it's very interesting that because Christopher Lloyd, of course, is just like he's just a cultural touchstone, with Roger Rabbit and of course especially with Doc Brown. Jacob, I actually got into Back to the Future more when I was a teenager. I never really got into that series as a kid. That's mostly because as a kid, I never really got into live action movies in general. Like it was all about animation when I was a kid. I actually remember. Do you remember when TBS used to like play marathons of all 3 Back to the Future movies?
Not really. I never really caught them that way.
Okay, well that's how I first caught them. Was I remember just one day I was like home from like homesick from school or something, and TBS was playing like all 3 Back to the Future movies back to back to back, and like up to that point I'd seen like scenes, you know what I mean? Like I'd seen the Future 2015 scene before, but this was the first time I'd actually sat down and watched all 3 of them together. And yeah, that was basically like kind of the definitive moment. It's like, okay, these movies are awesome. And then, after that, I bought the DVD and everything, but I digress. Okay, Jacob, I feel like we pretty much run the gauntlet on this thing. Anything else you want to say about it?
No, well, the music was nice. I mean, it's not. I mean, I can't talk much about the music. I mean, it was basically serviceable.
It was good. Yeah. I like how they hold off until the very end to use the theme song.
Yeah, it was pretty cool how they did that. I mean, like it's kind of like how in the new show they like waited till all the gang was together to bring the new song in. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to see if they got Ron Jones to do the score because he did like the score for the show. But it's pretty interesting the fact that they didn't get him. Maybe because he was busy on the show. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the score is quite serviceable. I mean, it's it's very much in the it kind of has that like that ambling quality to it, like the kind of like the whimsical sort of like da da da. I don't know. It's nice.
David Newman did a good job, and
yeah.
I just like the end. It's basically just like the ending of Scrooge running off after Dijon, and he's got filled his pants full of money.
I mean, look, the score is, it's no Alan Menken or anything like that, but obviously, like we said throughout this podcast, it's kind of like it's interesting comparing this as a Disney Toons film to, you can't do it. You can't compare this as a Disney Toons film to the, to the proper Walt Disney Animation Studios films. It's just unfair.
I would have actually liked to see the official film from Walt Disney Animation Studios to do maybe not necessarily DuckTales, but a Scrooge McDuck.
Oh, that would be interesting. Oh my god. Oh man.
It'll probably never happen. I mean,
probably not. But that would be. Now I'm like super intrigued, Jacob. That's a really interesting idea.
I mean, like it's separated from the DuckTales continuity.
Right. Like maybe animated in the original show style more.
But separated from like any DuckTales, but like based on like Scrooge McDuck himself. That'd be pretty interesting to see, though. Like I said, though, I highly doubt that'll ever happen. I mean, they haven't even done the Mickey Mouse. They haven't even done the Mickey Mouse movie yet.
And we haven't done the Mickey Mouse movie either. That's another podcast we should get to soon.
The pitch, you mean?
Yeah, the pitch for a Mickey movie.
It's like, come on, Bernie Manson. I mean, you can't go wrong with what he's doing. I mean, come on, get on Disney, do it.
I guess Mickey is getting a ride, so, one step at a time.
I mean, it's progress.
Right. Anyways. Anything else to say about this one, Jacob?
No, I mean, I think we've pretty much gone over everything. I mean, I guess I could just tell you my favorite line was one of my favorite lines was that, like, when Scrooge was, like, donating it to a museum and all that. It's like that doesn't sound like Scrooge. It's like, that doesn't get a huge tax break. That does.
That does. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that's pretty much all I can say. I mean, I think we're pretty much, anything more, would be like basically going in circles.
You're right. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I love talking about old Disney movies like this. I kind of want to make it a point on the channel to talk about more underappreciated Disney movies. Not sure if we're going to make that a regular thing or not, but there's a lot of them out there. Another bucket list podcast of mine that I'd love to do before the year's out is The Rescuers Down Under, which, Jacob, for my money, I mean, I'd have to revisit it, but The Rescuers Down Under might be my all-time favorite Disney movie. Like, I love it that much. It's amazing.
It definitely takes some notes from Indiana Jones as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually kind of why that's why I want to follow this up with Rescuers Down Under.
Especially that opening scene with that sweeping score over the plains of Australia. I mean, that's a great scene.
You're right. I mean, come on.
I mean, funny thing, we've never actually seen an Indiana Jones movie set in Australia, so that'd actually be pretty interesting.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways. Yeah. And of course, folks, we'll be back talking about new DuckTales episodes as soon as they come out. But in the meantime, Jake, I think it's fair to say we can probably squeeze in at least one Discovering DuckTales a week from now until then, right?
Sounds good. I just have to remember where we left off.
I'm pretty sure we left off on Castle Duckula or something like that.
Maybe something along those lines.
I'm not sure exactly what the episode's called, but hold on. Actually, sorry. Now I'm curious. Sorry, folks. God. DuckTales. Let me just look it up really quick. It feels like a hurricane here in Duckburg. These cars, lasers, airplanes.
Duck blur.
All right.
I never actually learned what a duck blur is.
Let's see. Yeah, Hotel Strange Duck was the last one we did.
Oh, yeah.
So the next one after that is going to be The Lost Crown of Genghis Khan. Actually, wait, did we not do that one? That one sounds familiar.
I don't think we did.
Okay, well, I'll just have to go back and look in the playlist. Anyways, thanks for joining us, folks. And like I said, we'll definitely be going over all the, the DuckTales episodes and whatnot. I feel like I've been dragging this out for far too long, so I'll just sign off now. Woohoo!